No? Yes.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning. All are 6th students? Hello? All of you are all of you belong to semester 6?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now today's topic is forearm fractures, including the fracture dislocations also. Okay. So అవునా? Yeah, it's okay. Thank you. So today we discuss about forearm fractures. I am Dr. Venugopal, Associate Professor of Orthopedics. Yeah, coming to the forearm fractures. So what are to be understood? Because you are very new to the orthopedics, as well as you have you have to learn fundamentals from basics. So then, so anyway, now today we are discussing about forearm fractures. So what to understand? So you must know the relevant anatomy and the incidence and mechanism of injury, and what are the clinical findings, and how to classify, and how to treat, and what about outcome. These are the things. Suppose if any fractures or anything, whenever you are treating something, means you must know the outcome also. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So all of you must concentrate in this. Huh? Yeah, first of all, if we discuss about the relevant anatomy in brief, the of the forearms, the first the bones and ligaments, then followed by muscles, then neurovascular structures. Hello.
Yes, sir.
1 second. I think it has got stuck. Yeah. So when coming to the relevant anatomy of forearm, mainly the bones and ligaments of the forearm, mainly the shape of ulna and radius, especially there is a bowing of the radius, which is important for the rotation. Rotation, the mainly the interosseous membrane, which adheres or tethers to the two bones obliquely from the distal ulna to the proximal radius. So, from distal ulnar part to the proximal radius, there is an attachment in between the two bones, which is called interosseous membrane, which is very important, which runs obliquely. So, that is as well as the radial bowing are important for the rotatory pronation and supination movements of the forearm and wrist. So, what about these bones and ligaments? So, coming to the proximal radial ulnar joint, so all the bones and ligaments, the radiocapitellar joint is if there is an injury to the radiocapitellar joint, it is associated with Montigia fracture, like the annular ligament, which is a round ligament which surrounds the neck of the radius. Okay. So coming to the muscular anatomy, what are the various compartments? Forearm is very important relevant to their compartments because it is divided into anterior and posterior. The anterior compartment is called volar, in which the all flexors are attached, the passing through, and the posterior is called dorsal, where all extensor muscles and tendons will pass. So coming to the neurovascular anatomy, because very important this one in the forearm. The posterior interosseous branch which runs along the neck of the radius is a branch of radial nerve, which is very important because whenever we are dealing with any fractures or doing any surgeries, we must take care of this nerve, posterior interosseous nerve, and we must be sensory. We must be aware of sensory branch also, that is superficial branch. Okay. Then coming to the radial artery, which is located behind the brachioradialis muscle, is in forearm. So the radial artery also passes through from in the anterior aspect of the forearm as well as the wrist. Then ulnar nerve. Ulnar nerve was the one which travels along the ulna. This is ulnar nerve. And another one is a subcutaneous. It is very subcutaneous ulnar bone as well as nerve is also subcutaneous. Coming to ulnar artery which travels along the ulna. So what about the incidence of forearm? The forearm fractures. So mainly the radius and ulna, both the fractures together include both bones forearm fractures. There are 44% of all fractures in the emergency department worldwide. And in the actually 1998 census, there were only 1.5 million fractures of the hand, and so 1,10,000 were between the ages of 18 to 64, and 1,95,000 were between 5 to 14 years old. I mean, the incidence is very common in children, from the age of 4 to 5 years to up to 20 years. And the accidental falls were the most common cause for forearm fractures, because the accidental fall is quite common. Fall in the floor, fall on the outstretched hand. These are quite common at any age. So the accidental falls are the most common cause. They constitute about 47% of the forearm fractures. Next, what about mechanism of injury? So forearm fractures, which from low energy, can be due to direct blow. They may be due to direct injury or indirect injury. So, for example, low energy injury. If there is a low energy injury which is hitting directly, that causes the forearm fracture. For example, nightstick fracture. What is nightstick fracture? It's a isolated ulnar fracture. So, if you want to block any blunt object hitting towards you with the help of your forearm, so automatically your ulna will be facing that object. So that causes nightstick fracture, isolated ulnar fracture. So again, this is also to be the indirect transmission. So Monteja fracture and Galeazzi fracture. These two are the example for indirect forces. Later we discuss these Monteja and Galeazzi fractures. So coming to the mechanism of injury of the forearm fractures, they result from high energy also, maybe due to either indirect low energy as well as high energy. Low energy impact is different and high energy impact is different. Low energy, there may not be any combination. So what do you mean by combination? Anyone? Can you answer? What do you mean by combination in fracture? Hello? What do you mean by combination? Combination means there are more than two fragments. Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
What do you mean by combination? Anyone? Can I expect answer from you, any one of you? Combination is when there are more than two fragments. Suppose if there is any fracture, but there are two fragments only, both distal and proximal. So if there are more than two fragments, I mean multiple fragments, then it is called comminuted fracture. So if there is a high energy injury, direct high energy injury will cause a comminuted fracture. So coming to what are the clinical features of the forearm fractures? So usually the patients present with deformity, pain and swelling. And as well as you should not miss the one joint above and one joint below also, because the joint below is the wrist and joint above is the elbow. You need to examine these two also, because there may be associated injuries or fractures or sprain of these joints also. And another one, some patients may come with the tight forearm in case of fracture, after fracture, comminuted fracture. That indicates there may be a chance of compartment syndrome. What do you mean by compartment syndrome? It's a increased intra-osseofacial compartments, because the forearm is divided into some compartments, volar and dorsal. So the increased intra-osseofacial compartmental pressure will cause compartment syndrome. And also you must check the open wound, because open wounds treatment is different. And also you have to check the associated nerve injuries, so especially in case of open fractures. Hmm? And you have to document it properly. And on clinical examination, you must identify the swelling, tenderness and decreased movement, and carefully examine any wounds over the ulna, palpate the elbow, especially the radial head, and palpate the wrist and stability of the distal radial ulnar joint. And carefully you must assess the neurovascular function of all nerves. What are the nerves that are passing and their functions? Those things must be examined, assessed. And these are the example of forearm fracture. So you need to take good quality AP and lateral X-rays of the entire forearm, including the elbow and wrist are necessary, because this is the this is the fracture. Here also there is a fracture. Here also there is a comminuted fracture. So these type of fractures may lead to compartment syndrome, swelling of the tight compartment of the forearm. So in radiographic examination, so the radial head must be aligned with the capitellum on all views. This is the radial head. Sorry. This is the radial head. It must align with the capitellum. Okay. And example, simple ulnar fracture. So in some cases, radial head is dislocated. If you see this X-ray, in second X-ray, the radial head is dislocated anteriorly, like this. And forearm fractures, coming to the radiograph, because the relationship of the distal ulna and radius must be symmetrical. See, if there is a fracture of the distal lower 1/3 of the radius here, associated with disruption in the wrist joint, which is there is a disturbance in the distal radioulnar joint. This is the distal radioulnar joint. So definitive evidence of distal radioulnar joint disruption include widening of space between the radius and ulna. So there is a widening of space between this radius as well as ulna. So how do you classify? So classification, this one with ligamentous injury, without ligamentous injury, there are different types of classification. So one is the EVO classification, which is a very simple classification in which it is divided into 3 A, B and C types. So A is a simple fracture, B is a wedge fracture and C is a complex fracture. So simple fracture is the one where there is no comminution. Already I told you that there are only two fragments, and this is called simple fracture. Wedge fracture, in which there is in between the two fragments there will be a single butterfly shaped fracture. A fragment will be there. That is called wedge fracture. And another one is a complex fracture, where there is a segmental and comminuted fragment. What about segmental? What do you mean by segmental fracture? Because you must know the terminology of the fractures. Segmental fracture is the one where there is a fracture at two different locations in the same bone. Suppose if there is a radius, so I will show you before in the previous X-ray. I will show you. Yes, this is a segmental fracture because in the same bone there are fracture at two levels, at here as well as here. So that is a segmental fracture. Next one is a all the refers to diaphyseal fracture because every long bone is having three parts mainly: metaphysis, epiphysis, and diaphysis. It usually occurs in the diaphyseal region. So in simple fracture AO classification in type A, see there is a only ulna fracture. There are different types again in simple fracture. Only ulna fracture, radius is normal, and radius only fractured, ulna is normal, and both bones broken. These different types. And wedge fractures also same. Sometimes ulna alone may happen, sometimes radius alone may happen, sometimes both bones may happen. Then type C, comminuted fracture, complex fracture, where ulna alone, radius alone, and both bones. Same again. And forearm fracture treatment goal. What is the goal of treatment? So, you have to restore the normal relationship between the radius and ulna. And the radial bow is essential for ulnar functioning of the forearm. So, that must be remembered while treating any forearm fractures. Got stuck. So treatment, coming to the treatment of forearm fractures, first thing is the close reduction and casting, in which there is high rates of non-union and malunion and poor functional results will happen. And the next one is the open reduction and internal fixation, where there is high rates of union and excellent function will be there. Next, coming to the non-surgical treatment of the forearm, mainly in closed treatment, there is a functional brace or cast. Usually, what we call it as slab or POP cast, those things. So, if there is ulnar fracture, only for stable closed fracture of the distal 1/3 with less than 10 degrees of the angulation. Less than 10 degrees angulation means then you can treat by closed way. If only completely non-displaced fracture, radius, in case of radius, if it is an intact fracture, one cortex is intact or non-displaced, then you can manage with slab or cast conservatively. So nightstick fracture, already I told you what is nightstick fracture. Isolated ulnar fracture. This one, see, this one is the isolated ulnar fracture. So, for example, if you consider this as a case example, here is a 30 years old male hit with a golf club. So, there is a closed fracture of the isolated ulna. So, here there is no angulation, ulna is intact and straight. So, what is the treatment option? Here, in this case, such cases we will manage conservatively. So, we put a slab or cast, So nightstick fracture. So closed splinting after some suppose for the previous X-ray after closed splinting after 3 months follow up, see there is a formation of callus here. It is already united here also. So surgical treatment of the forearm fractures. So surgical treatment is indicated for all unstable fractures and all open form of fractures, unstable as well as open, because very few stable enough to treat non-surgically in adults, and most girls or boys of greater than 10 years of age require surgery. Options, what are the options of the surgery? They are the external fixation, intramedullary rod, and open reduction with the plates. So they are the external fixation, intramedullary rods, as well as open reduction with the plates. So this is an example for external fixation, especially if you go to the this one open fractures. Gustello Anderson, there is a classification. You must, all of you must know it. You read it. So in Gustello Anderson type 3 B and C open fractures, we will put first external fixation. Intramedullary fixation of forearm fractures, it is a little bit controversial because it is upper limb fracture, non-weight bearing. So usually we will not go for intramedullary nailing. Normally we go for tibia, femur, weight bearing areas, because to make the patient for early weight bearing, we will apply these nails. But here most of them we treat either conservatively, or if not possible, we treat by what? We treat by plates. Because the advantage of the nailing is, one important nailing advantage is it prevents the rotational instability. Means it maintains the rotation. So pediatric fractures. In case of children, in pediatric fractures, we can treat the with the intramedullary nail. So this is an example for intramedullary nail. So nowadays, in pediatric fractures, usually now we are treating with, if at all going for surgery, we will treat with intramedullary elastic nails. Elastic nails are one improvement in forearm fractures. So followed by cast. Over that we put cast also. So intramedullary fixation, the elderly female with metastatic carcinoma. So secondary fracture. Sometimes there may be secondary fractures occur because of some malignancy somewhere. So that is also one thing. So here also an example for pathological fracture. Intramedullary rod fixation, which is very rare. Sometimes there is no option, we will treat like this. This is one type of nail called Ender's nail. Now, plate fixation is the ideal treatment. So the indications include diaphyseal fractures of type 1, type 2 and type 3A open fractures, and those associated with the compartment syndrome, we need to do plate fixation. Plate fixation consistently provides stable, strong anatomic fixation that eliminates the need for external casting and allows early functional motion with union rates to go greater than 95%. So that's why we prefer plate. What are the principles of plate? They restore the anatomy, and they restore the length, and they restore the rotational alignment, and they restore the radial bowing. Radial bowing is very important, as I told you in the beginning. So plate fixation helps like this. Sometimes we need to do bone grafting also. Later you will come to know what is bone grafting and all. So the coming to the technical tips of plate for normally we use LCDC plate, low contact dynamic compression plate or dynamic compression plate. That's all. That much you must know. And next, restoration of radial bow is also important. It is simple to maintain radial bow in case of simple fractures, but it's somewhat difficult in case of comminuted fractures. So this is what after plate application. This is a plate normally we use. This is DCP plate, dynamic compression plate. So DCP, this is a locking compression plate. The difference between locking plate and dynamic compression plate is the mainly, so the entire plate is in contact with the bone here in case of DCP, but in locking plate the entire plate will not be in contact with the bone. Over the only the holes, whole part of the screw part of the plate is in contact with the bone. But so these are the modern plates, low contact dynamic compression plate, means locking plates. So that type of plates are nowadays we are using. and they are giving good results. So this is one example for locking plate. So that's what I told you, what is a locking plate and what is dynamic compression plate. And forearm fracture plate fixation, this is an example. A 50-year-old male with a comminuted fracture of the both bones of the forearm after a motor vehicle accident. So after taking X-rays, AP and lateral, you can see here there is a fracture, isolated transverse fracture of the distal one-third of the radius as well as the comminuted fracture of the ulna. Both are seen here. So forearm fracture plate fixation. For this is an example of plate fixation. So for both the radius and ulna, plates are fixed. So usually 3.5, either dynamic DCB plate or locking compression plate will be applied. So this is also one example of forearm fracture, both bones at the same level. See, here there is a fracture of both bones, proximal one-third, and as well as there is a fracture of the ulna also at extended little bit distally also. So for that also the choice is surgery with the plate. So this ulnar, how to fix the ulna, this one. So coming to the surgical part, there are approaches, anterior approach, posterior approach, both will be there. So we will do either anterior approach or posterior, means volar approach or dorsal approach depending on the fracture location. So this is a posterior approach. Posterior means dorsal approach. The first one is the volar approach, which is anterior approach. So whenever you are doing a posterior by posterior approach, you are getting this nerve, deep branch of radial nerve. So which is very important, and as well as posterior interosseous nerve pin, which leads to the wrist and finger drops. So normally when to do intervention, normally we need to do early surgery, which is desirable, and because we get reduction very easily and we can avoid some complications. And a delayed surgery means it may result in poor soft tissue healing as well as some sort of difficulty like contractures and all. So what are the special fractures in this? In EVO classification of special fractures, these are the fractures also which are associated with the joint disruption. For example, Galeazzi fracture, Montigia fracture, or both combined also will be there. And now I will tell you what is Galeazzi and what is Montigia fracture. So the fractures associated with other injury, floating elbow, open fractures also may happen. So see, I will show you now. The Galeazzi. So, are you able to see these X-rays? All of you? Hello? Are you able to see these X-rays?
Yes, sir.
So, where is the fracture here? Where is the fracture? After seeing the X-rays, can you identify where is the fracture here? So, here there is a fracture of the distal one-third of the radial shaft. This is the distal one-third. So, distal one-third of the radial shaft with the dislocation of the distal radial nerve joint. Fracture of the distal one-third with the dislocation of the distal radial nerve joint. That is called Galeazzi fracture. So, Galeazzi fracture is always called as Galeazzi fracture dislocation, not a simple Galeazzi fracture, because always it is associated with dislocation. See, this is the X-ray. In AP view, it will be like this, and in lateral view, it will be like this. So, radiograph, what are the various signs how to read the Galeazzi fracture? So, distal radial ulnar joint. There is a fracture at the base of the ulnar styloid. Sometimes may or may not happen. So, and widened distal radial ulnar joint and AP view. See, this is a distal radial ulnar joint which is widened. So, there is a gap. Normally, this gap will not be seen in normal X-ray. And there is a subluxed ulna lateral X-ray, and ulna will be subluxed if you take lateral X-ray, and more than 5 mm radial shortening. Radial shortening will be there, more than 5 mm. And radius fractures of less than 7.5 centimeter from the wrist joint. Because it is a distal third fracture, it must be less than 7.5 centimeter from the wrist joint. That is normally these things we can observe in the Galeazzi fracture X-ray. So this is an example for LHG fracture. So it is best treated with again plate because it is also called as a fracture of necessity. Why? Because any fractures which we need to treat compulsorily with the surgery cannot be managed by conservative management in adults. So that fracture is called as a fracture of necessity. So LHG fracture is one such a type of fracture of necessity. So this is best treated with open reduction, internal fixation with the plate. Once you do the open reduction and fixation of the radius, automatically this joint will come approximate each other. This joint will come into normal alignment. So Galeazzi fracture always require plate fixation. Already I told you. So after treatment surgery, we need to do the post-op protocol also. Okay, if distal radial ulnar joint is stable, we need to go early movement. Early motion can be encouraged. And if distal radial ulnar joint is unstable, then you need to immobilize forearm in supination because the fracture is at the lower one third of the distal radius or distal fracture of the distal radius. So in that case, there will be attachment of the pronator teres will be distally on volar aspect and supinator will be little bit proximally. So to overcome the action of the pronators, we need to immobilize the in supination for about 4 to 6 weeks if it is unstable. So Galeazzi fractures also associated with damage to the TFCC. What do you mean by TFCC? Anyone? What do you mean by TFCC? Is a fibrocartilaginous structure which is present over the ulnar aspect to radial aspect of the distal part of the forearm nearly at the wrist joint. So which may require early or late repair because Galeazzi fracture is most of the times associated with TFCC, triangular fibrocartilaginous ligament injury, which requires early or late repair. So now anyone can you define what is a Galeazzi fracture? All of you are able to hear? All of you are able to hear or not?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, now you tell what is Galeazzi fracture?
Fracture of distal one third of the radial shaft along with dislocation of distal radial ulnar joint, sir.
Okay. What are the complications associated with along with this fracture? So what also will be injured along with this? Already I told that is a triangular fibrocartilaginous ligament. Now coming to the Monteggia fracture. So Galeazzi fracture is at the distal one third. So Monteggia is at the proximal one third, upper one third. See, this is a Monteggia. The Monteggia fractures are displaced fractures of the proximal one third of the ulnar shaft combined with radial head dislocation. See, if you see this X-ray, you can define the fracture very easily. So it is the fracture of the proximal 1/3 of the ulna along with the dislocation of the proximal radioulnar joint or radius. So here radius is not in intact with capitulum, so it has gone anteriorly. So this is the most common type of Monteja fracture. So you must know the difference between the Galeazzi and Monteja. And also you must remember that Monteja fracture will be called Monteja fracture dislocation, not only simple Monteja fracture, because always it is associated with dislocation. Then only we call it as Monteja fracture dislocation. So there the injury may happen in case of Galeazzi fracture along with the bones to the fibrocartilaginous ligament TFCC. But here in case of the other soft tissue that is injured is the round annular or annular ligament. There will be a complete rupture of the annular ligament of the radius. Annular ligament is the one which surrounds the neck of the head and neck of the radius. That will be completely disrupted, ruptured. Then that's why radial head will be dislocated. So this is an example of line diagram which shows the soft tissue connections of the radius and ulna to each other. So if it is this is a proximal radial ulnar joint where there is an annular ligament is there along this one. So this is the interosseous membrane. So these things will be disrupted. So other associated lesions of the Monteja fractures include injury to the radial nerve. Already I told you, radial nerve, and there is a palsy of both the deep branch of the radial nerve and posterior interosseous nerve. Both will be sometimes injured, sometimes one or other nerve will be injured. So all these things are described in case of Monteja fractures. So how to classify? So Monteja fracture is classified by Bado. So it's called Bado's classification, BADO. So one same, simple, very easy to remember because ulnar fracture is same, means at the same level always at the proximal 1/3. But the dislocation of the radius will be different. In type 1, along with the fracture of the ulna proximal 1/3, radial head will be dislocated anteriorly. In type 2, the ulna along with the fracture of the ulna, radial head will be dislocated posteriorly. Here see posteriorly gone in this case, posteriorly gone radial head. Here and gone anteriorly. And in type C, along with this type, there will be lateral dislocation of the radial head. Radial head has gone laterally. So in type 1, radial head goes anteriorly, type 2 posteriorly, and type C laterally. But the ulnar fracture will not change. It will be there at the proximal 1/3. But in type 4, again it's like a type 1, like anterior dislocation of the radial head along with the fracture of the shaft of the ulna as well as radius also. See here, this is an example. So radial head has gone anteriorly and there is a fracture of the shaft of the proximal third ulna as well as radius. This is the only difference between type 1 and type 4. Are you able to understand this classification? Did you understood? Understand or not? Tell, you need to tell. Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So these are the 4 types. Only one student is always answering. What about others? Are you hearing?
Sir.
Okay. So I need some answers from you people. Whenever, so this is a Monteja fracture. Already I described the classification. So see, this is a tabular form in which the mostly anterior type 1 is the most common, 60%, and type 2 is the posteriorly gone, 20%, and type 3 is the laterally gone, 15%, and type 4 is the anterior dislocation radial head along with the fracture of the shafts of both the bones. This is 5%. So see, you must know this one. So again same, these are already described. So type 2 and type 3 and type 4. So on examination of the Monteja fracture forearm, how do you, if you check clinically, there will be a swelling, first swelling and then tenderness, and then movements will be painful, pronation and supination movements. Pronation and forearm got pronation, supination as well as flexion, extension movements. So in this pronation and supination are mainly painful. And the Monteja fractures often will reveal shortening of the forearm due to angulation. If the fracture is comminuted or segmental or angulated, then it leads to shortening. And radial head may be palpable in the antecubital fossa following antidislocation. Yes, that is also one important clinical finding where the radial head of the radius will be dislocated anteriorly so that you can feel the cubital fossa, antecubital fossa of the elbow. Now, see, these are AP and lateral views of the forearm. So, along with that, you need to take the elbow and wrist x-rays also, because you should not miss, because most of the times these forearm fractures are also associated with the elbow as well as wrist injuries. So, Monteja fracture means definitely fracture of forearm along with elbow injury. And Galeazzi means definitely a fracture of distal 1/3 forearm along with the wrist injury. So, you need to take both x-rays. So what do you want to check in X-ray? Any fracture of the ulna, especially proximal fracture, evaluate the radiocapitellar line on the lateral radiograph. The line drawn between the radius should intersect with the middle of the capitellum. See this one. A line drawn along with the radius. These are along with the shaft of the radius, exactly from the center of the shaft. This should intersect at the center of the capitellum. Capitellum is one of the articular surface. So this is the normal X-ray. In case of dislocation of the radial head or fracture of the radial head, like in Monteja fracture, the radiocapitellar line normally it should go through like this. So here also it should go through in this way, but it has gone, this line has gone more anteriorly. It is not at all crossing the capitellum. So that is one of the most important X-ray finding in case of fracture dislocation of the radial head. So this one is an example for Galeazzi fracture, isolated ulnar fracture. So distal 1/3 fracture. So this is already I told you, this is the example for nightstick fracture. Complications of this Monteja fracture include paralysis of the deep branch of radial nerve, as well as the non-union, which is quite common. Again, this is also a fracture of necessity. What do you mean by fracture of necessity? Already we discussed. What do you mean by fracture of necessity? Anyone?
Surgery becomes essential, sir.
Yes. So what is the example for which? Tell me another example of one fracture, a fracture of necessity, because this is Monteja. Yes, Galeazzi as well as Monteja, as well as one of the most common fracture which may happen in elderly people. That is also fracture of necessity. What is that? Lower limb. Just you can guess it. What is one of the most common fracture in elderly people due to some simple fall? Fracture neck of femur. So fracture neck of femur is also fracture of necessity. Compulsory surgery in elderly people. Even children also, we need to do some closure pinning. Another complication include recurrent dislocation or subluxation of the radial head due to an unrepaired tear in the annular ligament, and which is common after close reductions. So how do you manage? So again, there is no point of close reduction and casting in this case. Only very small children means you can do, but compulsory you need to do surgery. Again, same. You need to do open reduction, internal fixation with the plate. So you must do under the general anesthesia. 3.5 mm dynamic compression plate or locking plate must be done to the ulna. Once you reduce the ulna and fix with the plate, radius will be again relocated to its normal position. So, in this case, like in Galeazzi fracture, along with the fracture management, you must repair one soft tissue. What is that? Already I told you. What is a soft tissue structure that should be repaired most of the times in Galeazzi fracture? Anyone?
Annular ligament.
No, that is in case of Monteja fracture, but the lower one third. I am asking about Galeazzi.
Triangular fibrocartilage.
Yes, triangular fibrocartilaginous ligament (TFCC). But here, in this case, annular ligament will be ruptured, so we must repair this. The postoperatively, the patient is to be placed in posterior elbow splint, and with a stable fixation, physical therapy can be started with active flexion extension and supination pronation exercises. Yes, after some time, if you are confident enough that you have fixed very rigidly with the plate, then you can slowly advise the patient to do flexion and extension exercises as well as pronation supination. So if the radial head is sometimes comminuted, radial head is also fractured like in type 4. So in those cases, patient may be placed in a long arm cast along with the plate. So this is an example for Monteja fracture. After fixation the ulna, radial head is usually stable. See here, after ulna is fixed with the plate. Again, radial head has come into its normal position. If open reduction is required for the radial head, the annular ligament must be repaired. Associated with the radial head, fractures may require fixation. Yes. So these are one of the post-operative X-ray of the Monteja fracture dislocation. So Monteja fracture, this is an example of Monteja fracture again. This belongs to which type? Type 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 in classification. You must tell now. What is this? After seeing the X-ray, type 1 or type 2? Because where is the radial head here?
Type 1, sir. Type
Type 1.
1.
Why? Why?
Anterior dislocation of radius.
Radial head is gone anteriorly. So it is a type 1. Type 1 means, so again you need to fix with the plate, already fixed with the plate. So once you have applied the plate rigidly, then automatically radial head will sit in its normal position. So this is also one example of this Monteja fracture. So can you say it's a Monteja fracture or not? This for this X-ray. What is this X-ray? Tell me. I will give you three options: Monteja fracture, isolated ulnar fracture, another one is a Galeazzi fracture. Which one? This X-ray. If you understand the concept what I told just now, you can answer this question. What is this fracture? Does it belong to Monteja? So this is not a Monteja fracture because proximally there is no fracture and no dislocation here. Here there is a fracture of the at the almost middle of the ulna. So this one in lateral U, in APU it is normal distal radial ulnar joint, but in case of lateral U, distal nothing is seen. So it is only isolated fracture of the ulna. So what do you mean by floating elbow? You have any idea? Floating elbow, like a floating knee. Floating elbow means if there is a fracture of the one bone above elbow and one fracture below elbow. If above elbow and below elbow, both the sides, if there are two fractures, then elbow will be like a floating. So it is called floating elbow. Similarly, the knee, floating knee. So these floating elbow injuries will happen in direct high energy, high impact violent injuries. So you must check the radiographs and see the relation of the capital arm, radial head and all. And, definitely we need to do open reduction. That's all. So this is an example of floating elbow. Open fracture. Of course, open fractures are a separate session, separate big topic for you. So again, you will come across later with the open fractures. This is an example of open fractures. Already I told you to read the classification called Gustilo-Anderson classification. All of you must read for your next class. I will ask you what is Gustilo-Anderson classification. Okay. So this is about forearm fractures as well as Monteja and Galeazzi fractures. So all of you read this topic in your books, and in the next class I will ask some questions in this topic. Okay? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I hope everyone must have understood this.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So finally, lastly, you must know that what are the complications of forearm fractures in general, early and late complications. For any fracture, you need to classify into early and late. Early include compartment syndrome. I told you what is compartment syndrome, and there may be a neurovascular injury, and there may be an infection. Late complications include non-union, infection, malunion, synostosis, and sometimes persistent pain. In briefly, non-union means if the fracture is not united after 6 to 9 months, radiologically there is non-union. Infection is infection. Malunion is if the fracture is united in a wrong way because of any error. This is called malunion. Synostosis, one of the most common complications peculiar to the forearm fractures, in which the radius will be attached to the ulna. Radius will be healed with the ulna, and ulna will be united with the radius, crisscross manner. That's why while doing plating or closure nailing, you must be very careful that so that you should not fix the distal fragment of radius to the proximal fragment of ulna like that. So that results in synostosis. So these are the complications: compartment syndrome, and so see, if your compartment syndrome means there is increased pressure in the compartment of the forearm. If you neglect this, what happens to the muscle? See what happened to the muscle here after opening in the compartment syndrome. How is the muscle here? Color. Muscle lost its normal appearance. It is dull, already necrosed, blackish or brownish in color because of lack of oxygen saturation into this muscle. So because of increased compartment pressure and pressure on the vessels and nerves. So this is the thing. And, infection, of course, acute and late infections will be there. So while treating with the open fractures, we must be very careful so that we need to do proper thorough wash, debridement, antibiotics, all these things are very important. So again, there is another complication called malunion, in which there is a loss of movement with more than 10 degrees of angulation. So the forearm appears to be angulated. Bowing will be seen, some sort of angulation bowing. So that is a malunion. So synostosis will be there. Already I told you what is synostosis. And persistent pain. Persistent pain should likely they will be there, and which we need to evaluate thoroughly, and we should not remove the plate or implant immediately, and we should evaluate and wait for at least 2 years in adults. Then only we have to do some intervention. Sometimes there is a refracture after plate removal. If your patient comes to you after 10 years after plate fixation, what happens? Over the plate, there will be a thick callus and bone formation, very difficult to remove to the plate. That's why at the time of removal of plate, the bone will be again fractured. So that is one complication. So non-union and of course, non-union and fracture complications, you have to read. Then, so finally, while treating the forearm fractures, you must achieve mechanical stability with anatomic reduction and stable internal fixation, and optimize the biology of healing with anatomic reduction by direct or indirect technique. Okay, this is about the forearm fractures, including Bugalliazi and Montilla fractures. So thank you all for attending this class. Okay. How many
Thank
are
you.
there and how many are left?